Good evening, everybody. I was expecting Sarah or Vigilance to introduce us. My name's
Oh,
Dave.
sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry about that, Dave. Yeah, well, hello, everybody. um, Tonight we're going to talk about the biofield. And I know this is something that has gotten a hot topic here in the last couple of days, but there's been a lot of talk about it previously. And I want to kind of keep it as simple as possible in the beginning because there's a lot of people that want clarity around this topic before we dive into a lot of the real deep technical stuff. I know Dave has posted pictures in the past of his hands and things like that. And you guys have all probably seen the toroidal field pictures that float around. But this is like nothing new. It's just that it's one of those things that a lot of people aren't even aware of, and it's been researched and lots of study done on it. It goes by lots of different names and references. Some people know it as the aura. It's it you know Some people talk about it with in regards to the morphogenetic field. They talk about the field, the ether. These are like all concepts that kind of fit together. I know that when I realized what was happening or what was being described, I connected it with times in my life where I had felt this activated for me, and so it made a lot of everything made sense about it real quick. Um, a lot of times people will experience this in different ways with like Dave talks about extending his field to feel the people around him as he's driving down the street or I can feel it when somebody enters a room. I'm deaf in one ear, so I don't hear doors open. I have a dog that helps me with, if somebody's at the door or something goes wrong. But I literally don't hear things, but I can feel things. And I didn't know what that was and until I started, putting all this together. But that's what it is. Sometimes people will get goosebumps head to toe. That's an activation of this. Sometimes people, if you rub, and anybody can try this at any time, and if you take the palms of your hands and you face them towards each other but keep them a few inches apart, and you just kind of circle them around together, you'll start to feel that magnetism in between your hands. You'll start to feel, some people feel heat or tingling. That's kind of what we're working with here, what we're talking about here. These practices have been done for a long time through things like Qigong, yoga. The Heart Math Institute has done tons of research on this, as well as Rupert Sheldrake with his morphic resonance discussions. Joe Dispenza brings it up a lot. Seb Janiak. There's a lot of popular books and information out there on this. I know that there's also ways that Dave has talked in the past about the gamma knife and things like that. Another way that you can work with this field is through the use of tuning forks. Eileen McCusick is a fantastic, um, she's an academic that she started out as a body worker, a massage therapist years ago, and she started being able to feel this in other people. And so she went down the research road, got her PhD, wrote all these incredible dissertations, and has created, an entire healing business, from that angle. So there's a lot of topic to cover here. Please don't feel stupid asking questions about this because it can get quite advanced real fast, and I don't want to lose people on this because we all have this within us. And when we learn to work with it and activate this like at will, then it seems mystical and magical, but it's not. It's part of us, and we were all born with it. So I'm going to let you take it away, Dave.
Sure. The first thing is just to clarify when we're talking about these fields, we're not talking about the concept of a single frequency. When when people talk of a frequency, whether it be 5G or some magical frequency that's going to cure you. What they're missing is that a single frequency in the form of a sine wave, let's say, and I'll throw this up in the chat thing so that you guys can see it, is actually the sum of all even and odd harmonics. And the way that our bodies message from cell to cell is we release an electrochemical signal and we release light along with that electrochemical signal. So it goes all the way from 0 hertz all the way out beyond billions of hertz. And it's a complex shape that's formed in energy that transfers from one cell to another to signal a cell to do something. This is how your body actually breathes. This is how your arms contract, your muscles contract, and it's how we speak, how we hear. It's every part of us. This is the messaging system. Now, back around 1995, the IEEE, which is the International Electrical Engineering, I forget what the third E stands for, but the group actually decided to start recording and quantifying these signals. Now we can go back in time, all the way back in the Vedic um, buildings, the temples. There are mandalas. In Buddhism, there's mandalas. In Shintoism, there's mandalas. In Zoroastrianism, there's mandalas. In churches, we have church windows, that the circular church windows that have these beautiful um, shapes to the light that's coming through there. Well, it seems as though somebody knew something back then, because when we look with modern instrumentation at these signals coming between the cells, this is exactly what we see. Now, they use something called a cymoscope to look at the sound. And this would be acoustic all the way up to light. Now, what a cymoscope is just a little dish of water mounted to a speaker that vibrates. They shine light on the water, and the reflection of the water is photographed. Now, these complex shapes you'll see in nature, they look like diatoms because the diatoms emit a sound, a biomorphic field, it's called a bioquantum field, that matter coalesces around. And that's why they look like that. Now, I'm going to throw this little thing about a sine wave up there, and anybody stop me if they have problems comprehending, but we'll cover. If you look up on the chat, you'll see a little GIF image, a little animation, and you'll see the sine wave actually rotating as it creates a vertical and a horizontal sine wave. Now, that is a frequency. When we talk about frequencies, we usually pin them to sine waves. So it's not a frequency such as that. The wave shapes are much more complex. Now, I'll throw an image up of the human heartbeat so that you guys can get an idea of how actual beautiful these symbols are. Just amazingly beautiful. Um, this is the signal that causes your heart to beat. If anyone can see that, please let me know that it's actually showing up for you guys.
Yeah, it shows, Dave.
So as you can see, this is very, very complex. It has multiple frequencies in it. It's not a simple signal. Now, let's compare this to something that a computer uses. I'm going to throw up a picture of a USB signal. And the USB signal is common. Everybody has them on your phone and so forth. And I'm going to show you two types of differential signals. The one on the left is what's called a USB signal. The one on the right is what's called a TTL signal, transistor logic signal. And as you can see, it's multiple sine waves. It's not a single frequency. but it's the relationship between frequencies. When we look at what the human tissue creates, we're looking at the beautiful harmony that's created. Now, in reflection to church windows, we can see that the same thing was expressed in um, Christian church windows since early 4th century. And you'll see all the same similar shapes. Now, when we're talking about the field, every part of your body releases light that's coherent, just like these little shapes. And we have the ability to actually um, generate pure, coherent light, like a laser beam. Most of the time, we just sit around and glow. We don't have this coherence. We kind of go with the flow because we're unaware of it. Now, as we start to learn about a concept called hyperconsciousness, this is the state of consciousness in which reality becomes almost like a cardboard cutout copy of what the state of consciousness that you're in, and you're able to see all portions and perceive all portions of reality simultaneously. Now, there's an effect when light leaves your body. It's called a reflected load, and this is an electronics effect. So, if I know a particular path that light is going to take, and I measure the amount of energy necessary to illuminate something with that light beam, and I maintain the illumination, but the thing changes in space or it changes where it's at, the amount of power that I'm using will change as long as I keep the signal steady. So inherently, we have the ability to feel these changes. So you have everyone feels when somebody is staring at them. And that nonlinear effect is the effect of you actually sensing not them staring, but your field being interacted with. Now, the very cool part about all this stuff is that these are the same signals that allow the stem cells to differentiate. So if I take a hair from my leg and transplant it to my head, it'll express as scalp hair. It doesn't remain leg hair. Same thing with skin. If you transplant skin properly, it will take on the characteristics of the location that it's put on your body. And what causes that is the actual biomorphic or bioquantum field that your body expresses. So we're able to actually change the character of the way that we appear. And this is something pretty advanced. It takes a long time to actually get to the point where you can do it. But you can hide scars. You can make yourself appear more attractive. There's a lot of techniques that you can do just on the appearance part for vanity's sake. Now, it's because the perception that people have from you is the light that you reflect and the light that you produce. If that's coherent, you'll be brilliant, radiant. If it's discordant, you'll seem dark, you'll seem moody, your appearance will be homely or at least non-attractive. Now, in our day-to-day lives, we sync with people. We'll have romantic attraction. We'll have disgust. We'll have just from being around the people, and we're actually sensing that. This goes even farther in that in recent years, because of the amount of stress put on humankind, we've become aware of people's emotional states. So it's kind of like an empathic thing where we're developing the ability to feel the profound sadness or the anger or the sorrow or whatever the emotions are that are around us. And this is actually an epigenetic change in us. And at the same time, it's fulfillment of cyclic prophecies. And in my opinion, I think it may be the lifting of the veil, a natural progression that we actually come out of not understanding the full context of our reality. Now, what's interesting to me is when I look in the past and I see the evidence that somebody knew this, somebody saw this, why do they make mandalas with salt and sand that have these patterns? Are they seeing the patterns? Are they sensing them? Now, as we start getting more and more aware and focused on this, we're able to control more and more of our reality. And because we're able to actually message each other without speaking, without distance or time being an issue. Any questions on anything?
Well, I wanted to just to give people an idea of I mean, you're talking about different physical effects that can take place, but what I have come to understand too is um, when you do that, when you're able to engage this purposefully, and the more you do it, it'll last for extended amounts of time. It's not something that just goes away or you turn off, but you can turn this on, and it's learning how to do that is kind of the tricky part. And I think, I don't know that everybody really understands what we're talking about here. I know a lot of people do because I've seen the chats about it, but if you can do this and then pray while you're doing this, um, if you can do this, this is what, like Lynn McTaggart's work surrounds. She's been very well known in the Power of Eight method, which is group intention. But it's not just a group of people coming together and hoping that because they're together and they're going to pray together or intend something together, you can really mess things up if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't use these, if you're not engaging in these things in the correct way. And so by doing these things, or this, whatever you call it, I think that might help. Dave, can you explain to us how you sense into this or turn this on, or whatever terminology you want to use?
Well, um, I exist constantly, uh, keeping my body in a presentable, as healthy as I can possibly be state. Now, I've done that by, in the state of hyperconsciousness, actually looking at what parts of my body. And there's a great scene from Kill Bill, the first movie, where she's recovering from a coma. She wakes up, some guy's raping her. She kills the guy, goes out, and climbs in the guy's pickup truck. She can't walk. She's dragging herself. She sits in the pickup truck and stares at her big toe. And eventually she starts being able to move her big toe and regains full function of her paralyzed lower extremity simply by becoming aware of what signals cause her body to move. Now, uh, with my state, I have so much neuropathy that I have severe tremors, similar to Parkinson's, and yet I keep myself from shaking. Now, when I'm just in that twilight point where I start to fall asleep, I have really serious tremors, like horrible tremors. But I can, while I'm conscious, I can actually keep myself from shaking. The other effect is that I'm actually able to relax it. Now, because I've been doing it for so long, it actually takes more effort to relax it than it does to cause it, if that makes any sense. In other words, my constant state is one where I'm presenting myself. Mystics used to call it a glimmer. Now I'm going to post a little video of my arm in which I show you revealing a scar that's on my arm. And as you watch it, you'll see the scar form. That scar has been there for 35 years. It's long, it's all the way across my arm. So if you take a look, there's a little video up there in the Mysteries of Earth chat, and you'll see the scar. Now, it takes effort for me to stop the uh, the glimmer, the impression of perfect, no scars, just simply because I've been doing it for so long. Now, the way that I got to the point where I was able to become coherent was back when I was a child. I was introduced to a project that was being run called Gondola, and a second project that was called Project Stargate. And there was a colonel named Jim Channon who was an absolute freakazoid hippie, and he was actually able to train us or to teach us the technique of syncing. It's bringing your body into harmony, and once you're in harmony with the external sound, then you become like a laser beam. You're actually able to sense things around you. Um, you have a heightened awareness. You have a conscious perception of your own body. So at any time, I can feel the blood flowing through my capillaries between my fingers or my veins between my fingers, just as an example. And without consciously focusing on it, it's just there. Now, this type of control, it's not something that happens day one. It takes many, many years of constant use to get to the point where you're just automatically doing it. Bob Monroe, Monroe Institute, has a really great program called HemiSync, and it allows you to access the state of hyperconsciousness that allows you to control your biomorphic field. It control the sound light imaging messaging between parts of your body. Now I'm going to throw another video showing the same effect on my forehead up there. I have a large gash scar on my forehead, and I keep it hidden normally. And my hair looks like crap. I got to go get a haircut. But you'll see the scar just appear during the video here as soon as it finishes uploading. There, you should be able to watch it now. So if you watched Sabrina the other day, you watched her raise the hair on her arm. Okay, that's showing that she's actually aware and able to control the little muscles on the follicles, which is not unusual. That's something you can actually do. Now, where the messaging is coming from, or what the messaging looks like, is actually quite beautiful, and cymatics gives us the ability to see these things, to visualize the actual sounds. And when I'm talking about sounds, I'm talking about complex harmonies with multiple layers and just beautiful stuff. The church windows example, here's a picture of female vocals that I'm posting up there. And I'm using an audio-visual kind of display here to get you guys to see. This is the vowels that she's saying. And you can see the shapes that are formed by that human voice. Now, the sound of what she's saying is in this video that I'm just uploading now. Looks like it's going to take a few minutes to get there, so I'll keep talking about it. I'll throw the male voice sounds up there as well. So you're able to see the difference between male and female, and then simple piano notes. And I had posted these in Broken Anthem and in our regular chat channel on Mysteries of Earth already for this. Now, understand that this stuff is three-dimensional. This is not a flat. It's if you think of it as a a shape moving through a flat plane, like a slice out of the shape. These can be think of like little message balls, that contain a lot of message in a very compact thing. A little bleep of information, and it generates as it passes through the cell. The information is absorbed in layers, just like we're seeing here. So when we hear sounds, when we see colors, when we see the flicker of lights, all these things have direct communicative effects on us. And this has been known for thousands of years, and it's been quantified by IEEE since 1995. So when you hear about people talking about electronic, uh, oh, they're getting sick from the 5G or what have you, that's not actually what they're getting sick from. There are people who are actually using this. Now, um, the CIA, its interest in it was in a process called remote perturbation. In other words, sending these signals across space and time to influence another person's body. Now, that could be a headache, that could be the heart stopping. And the Soviets developed psychotronic weapons, which were devices that would produce these particular sounds, such as the opposite of the sound of the heart beating, so that it would actually stop someone's heart. And we are so far, I mentioned before that we are 150 years ahead of where the latest iPhone is. We're not being exposed to what the actual technology is. So this stuff seems magical or mystical. It's not. This is hardcore today's technology. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Vigilance.
So this is something that we spoke about the other night with the biometric field, and in the video that Dave just showed with the group, the focusing on the scars and the ability to suppress the physical manifestation. So there is plenty scientific data that indicates that willpower or the ability to govern one's avatar. So your body, think about it like a video game, and this is where it helps bridge the language barrier or to bridge the idea. You know, there are many video games in the world, and one of the most popular ones are these role-playing games where people construct an avatar and then they interact within a world. Well, you have an avatar, which is your human vessel. You have your biometric field, you have the consciousness that is within your noggin. So we have the ability to focus that attention. So I've done similar to what Dave expressed here, where he can suppress his scars. I have been able to, in my lifetime, focus on parts of my body in this avatar and to drive healing and to drive intent. And this is where, when we think about free will, we think about our positive and negative reaction with various energies out in the world. We are, again, the creators. So you do have an influence on how your avatar performs. And that is expressed generally by people who say, let's say you're a gym person, you're very athletic, or you are a particular diet and so forth. But there are people in the world who express levels of health that make no sense with any kind of dietary or consumption. Like, I know individuals who've chain smoked for 70 years, but they've never developed lung cancer. I know people who've been alcoholics for 40 years and they've never developed cirrhosis of the liver. We know through the study of placebo effects, taking medication or being told this is what's happening or this is what is impacting you. So we know the effort of outside influence. And when we think about the field that you generate, not only at a very basic level, just your consciousness, like you exist. We're here right now in this moment having a conversation. You're here right now. That is an external expression, but that is also an internal expression. And that is very much referenced, I think, in the Bible, where it says, as below, as above, as below, because that is extremely truthful. There is a positive and negative aspect to not only reality, but ourselves. And finding the balance in that and weighting the middle path, that's where we look at, control of the field and control of what is going on with us.
Yeah, this topic can get so big and wide really quickly. And that's, I'm going to open it up and let people ask questions as they raise their hands. But another thing that I wanted to mention too, and again, this is how big this topic is. Those cymatic patterns that Dave showed, those are the patterns, the exact patterns that the planets make as they move around, as we're, going through the solar system, and they make alignments with each other. Those planets over periods of time all make these incredible patterns, just like what Dave has posted. So, this is as above, so below type stuff. And to get our heads around how big this is it's challenging. And that's why I want to take it slow so people can try and understand how to use this.
That's the wonder of this, is that there is a signal, and this was the first video that I did with BA, talking about inevitable change. And the signal has been accurately detected coming in from everywhere. And this signal, think of it like, if you're not familiar what a Mandelbrot fractal is, the if you look at it in the largest scale, you'll see a shape. If you go down to the smallest scale, you'll see the same shape. It's a repetition, so that every part is a image of the whole. And this is a concept that it's in several theosophical and theological um, belief systems, that we are all part of a greater whole. But the reality is that we modulate that signal, that life modulates that signal and produces these shapes and forms and things that we see. The shapes that we're seeing, the cymatic shapes, are a way for us to visualize them. Now, the causality of the sound is unknown. It's outside of our dimensional universal frame of reference. The people say it's God. People say it's the great universe. They have different belief systems on what to call it, but that's not the important part. The important part is that it's there, and we have an inherent both physiological and intellectual ability to make use of it. And it is so powerful, it's so big. Like Sarah's saying, this sound, and understand that when I'm saying sound, I'm talking about the complex shape that's coming in on all frequencies. It's coherent. And if we harmonize with it, it adds energy to our existence, our sound, our biophotonic emission, our bioquantum field gains energy when we're in harmony with it. In the case of diseased tissue, we can look at the diseased tissue and image it. For there's no real words for this. They call it, ultraspectral imaging. It's too difficult to say. But there should be some new word made for the concept of measuring this. But when we measure it, we can see that there's direct opposition or a canceling effect to that diseased tissue. Now, when we broadcast that same signal back at the diseased tissue, in the case of cancer, for instance, the cancer cells overheat and die. And that's like proven science. That's not uh, mystery magical stuff. So it does both things. It's able to heal, and it's able to actually destroy. It can destroy diseased tissue, incoherent tissue. So when we think about the evil in the world as being tuned into a different frequency, um, if we come into harmony as a unified humankind, it is very possible that just by the common love of all mankind would eliminate the existence of the darkness, of the evil from our reality, from the universe, so to speak. And, I go to biblical reference. I use a lot of historical references. And understand, I'm not Bible thumper. So Revelation 21:4 talks about wiping every tear from the eye so that no sorrow or pain would be known. And as a child, that really it seemed to me that that was like a box that God couldn't open, right? So it just seemed like an impossible thing. But realizing now that we very well may be able to change everything that has ever happened and everything that ever will happen. If we can come together and come into harmony, we're talking about literally um, becoming exactly what we were created to be. And to me, that is so hopeful. It's amazing to think that every pain we've ever had, every aspect of sorrow that we've ever had, can be erased from history, erased from reality. And I think that's the emergence. When people say the awakening or the emergence, I think that's what we're running towards. And it's a little bit frightening, but glorious at the same time.
Awesome. Yeah. And just to put an exclamation point on, or, puncture, whatever, around what Dave said earlier about this isn't just a single frequency, this is a harmonic, this is a multitude of frequencies harmonizing. Um, we have seven, well, I'm a traditional astrologer, but there are seven main planets, seven traditional planets in the sky. And when those move and make certain aspects with each other, they create effects on this earth. And you can absolutely watch this through history over and over and over play out as different alignments take place. And it's the luminaries and the planets all working in harmony, making these effects. Now, whether you want to say that that's a reflection as above, so below, or whether you want to say they're causing it or they're sending down sound, that's been argued for thousands of years amongst astrology and astronomy. But
There's a
yeah, it's
definite
really
correlation, regardless of what causes the correlation. We can see there's a correlation. Right.
absolutely over and over again. You can see it in the greater outside events happening in the world, and you can see it in an individual person's birth chart over and over and over again. So, okay, we're going to open it up for questions. I've got UC wants to go. Go ahead, hon.
Hey, you see, you have to unmute.
Yeah, I know. I had my hands were covered in caramel. I was making myself a froth coffee with caramel drizzle. I didn't think she'd call on me right away. Okay. Dang it, what was my question? Oh, so first question was so do we all resonate at the same base frequency then? So if there's a frequency to kill cancer cells and stuff. What is it? Sorry, my 8-year-old's birthday is today, so we got kiddos in the background too. But so then would that mean that all humans resonate at a base frequency to begin with?
Okay, so what we were saying in the beginning there was about the frequency. The concept of frequency, or the magic frequency that kills cancer, was like what Royal Raymond Rife was looking for with his microscope with a frequency generator on it. That's not what's going on. Um, when we talk about sound, sound has all sorts of frequencies in it. And even when I make a clicking sound, like if I say sip, crunch, that S that you hear is actually higher frequency than what your ear can hear, but it shapes the sound that's being created and gives it a sharp edge. So when we think of frequencies, we're talking about single tones that exist on their own that have really relatively little to do with our human physiology. Now, our delta brainwave, when we're in delta state, will track with the Schumann cavity resonance at about 7.8 hertz. But the signal that's on that carrier, if you think of it having a superimposed frequency on that 7.8 hertz, it extends all the way out into light frequencies. So when people say that we resonate between 7.8 hertz and 26 hertz, that's misleading because that's like saying that the subharmonic of 419 kilohertz, which is happens to be the perfect frequency that increases cellular mitosis. But the energy to get into the cell to increase that mitosis happens at 635 nanometer. So blasting 419 kilohertz as a single frequency at you does absolutely no good. Shining 635 nanometer light on you will make you lose fat, but it will not heal you. But if you pulsate that light with a quarter wave, a quarter of 635 nanometer on the increase and 635 nanometer on the decrease at 419,000 times a second, your cells will respond by increasing in energy and dividing. And that's mainstream FDA approved treatment science. This isn't mysticism or hocus pocus. This is mainstream science. Now, that particular device that does that is called the MLS laser. And you can get it in every city in the United States now, and actually most of Europe as well, too.
Okay, yeah, interesting. Totally new into diving into this subject. It's been something I've been trying to ignore for a while. Um, but I don't think it's something that I can get away from because, yeah, that's where we're at, right? So, my other question was, oh, when you read that part in Revelation where you said that it was something that, God couldn't do, like now really had me thinking because like with that Mandelbrot show that Tori did, even where she said that God is everything, that he is the people that are doing bad, that is still his children. And so like he encompasses everything, like, and so it would make sense that unless we get to that point um where there's a revealing of such, that God couldn't come in and do that. And then, I mean, would it be God? He wipes away every tear from your eye, right? And then you just know no more pain or sorrow. So it's almost like we would be like curing our self affliction, in a sense, because
You know, you see, I thought of this when I was a kid. I was thinking about this, that this negates free will. That was my thought. You know, I was a little kid when I first was introduced to that passage, and I said, well, if he's just going to take away all our pain, that's our memories. That's what makes our character. That's our, that's us. That's our free will. But
right.
that's not how it's going to happen. How it's going
No.
to happen is it's going to be us acting
Yeah,
through
we
the grace of God that does it.
yeah, for sure. We would be curing our own afflictions. And dang it, who was speaking right before me, aside from Sarah? I want to say it was Vigilant Blade. Um,
Yeah.
okay, so something he said totally resonated because I was like, all right, going back, like my um my grandmother's twin sister, she died when I was 14 from like lung cancer, and she never smoked a day in her life or drank. And so, those things happen. And it reminds me of that oh shoot, that Japanese guy who studied the water frequencies and stuff. And when she asked him,
Yamoto.
yes, Yumoto, when she asked him, what it does to people having, like those gruesome pictures on cigarette packets, or that it says that, like you will die if you smoke, when doctors always say that, it's like his response to that was brilliant. He's like, "That's horrible. You should never say that. Words matter. It should say something way more uplifting on it." But that's kind of my take on what Vigilant was saying earlier. And I think that's all I have.
It's almost
On
like
the hold on for a second, Vigilant. On the nicotine thing, the fun part is nicotine in itself does not cause cancer. Otherwise, anybody who eats Idaho potatoes would be dying of cancer. Idaho potatoes is the second highest the skin of an Idaho potato has the second highest nicotine content to tobacco. And yet no one seems to develop lung cancer or any other form of cancer from eating Idaho potatoes, russet Idaho potatoes. Now, if you take a look at the behavior of smokers in the days when everyone had their own cigarette and you had your own ashtray and you sat at your desk and you smoked, um, the amount of lung cancer was way smaller. When the pressure came in the 1970s to ostracize smoking as an attempt to lower the U.S. export, that's exactly what it was. It wasn't had nothing to do with health concerns. It was about economics internationally, because that was our primary cash crop was tobacco. Now, when they started creating smoking areas in buildings and started creating um, bars where you could smoke in one section, you couldn't smoke in the other. It concentrated people, and people had the habit of jump starting their cigarettes off from somebody else's cigarette, using each other's lighters, using the ashtrays, and it's a perfect transport for a pathogen. And when you actually take a look at dry mold from Arizona, the Arizona desert black mold, it's almost identical to lung cancer. That is an actual character that isn't looked at ever. And I think that's intentional. I think they're not exploring the fact that there could be a pathogen involved in lung cancer. And that would explain why some people have immunity and some people are suffering from it, even though they never smoked or they never did anything that should have, quote, caused lung cancer. Now, if you get out to Scottsdale and out in Phoenix, you'll see that there's 4 hospitals for lung cancer, and it's generally everywhere is non-smoking.
Ooh, snap. I just have one last thing to say now that you mentioned that. Because what a better way to directly reach a whole population's olfactory. Um, and they messed with it again back when they made the fire safe cigarettes, right? They added chemical to the paper, which is your hands again. And oh man, my brain just went a
You know,
million.
they outlawed the glue that was used for carpets because it was a known carcinogen, and yet the major brands of cigarettes still use that glue as the rolling paper glue on cigarettes. And the addition of um, burn modifiers to cigarettes, tobacco by itself, I smoke cigars, I smoke Nicaraguan cigars, and inhale, I use 22 milligrams of nicotine a day. Now, interesting thing about it is if I don't light the cigar before I toke on it, it goes out. It doesn't continue to burn. If I set a cigar down, it'll extinguish itself. Cigarette will continue to burn. And the reason for that is they've added gunpowder, actually like regular gunpowder, to the mix of the cigarette. Now, if you smoke gunpowder, or if you know people who have been like the cordite soldiers of World War One, all the cordite soldiers developed lung cancer from the fumes of the cordite that was used in the howitzers and in the large caliber weapons that we fired back then. So there's something to the actual propagation of the cancer. I think that American Cancer Institute and the tobacco companies that sell cigarettes are in hand with it.
Well, yeah, that makes sense because first they had to what? They had to segregate you. Secondly, they had to tell you what you were doing was bad. And then third, the guilt and them just outwardly saying smoking gives you cancer. And then what did they do? They implemented and they inserted all of these extra chemicals into the cigarette to pretty much justify what they were saying all along. It's like they created it again. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah,
And
Great,
that's
thanks, Brianna.
that's where we end up with what is the old rhyme? Sticks and stones might break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Like even in the environment they were dealing with, the environment we're living in right now, where we're seeing suddenly died. Let's say, for example, I've never seen a construction worker suddenly die in this entire time period. And you want to know what construction workers commonly do? Large consumption of alcohol, large consumption of cigarettes. Nicotine is an antiparasitic. Alcohol kills everything it touches. So the individuals that subject their body to these torments and how they're projected in the society, and I'm not excusing the other social impacts of these behaviors, but the individuals that are chain smoking and alcoholics, I can't say I've met any in the last little while that have fallen victim to anything that is going on. So what is
January
the body capable of?
January of 2021, there were three white papers released from hospitals in France in which they were prescribing nicotine patches for the hospital staff as a prophylaxis against COVID infection. Another aspect is that the cellular entry for nicotine is the ACE2 receptor site, as well as sartans. Now, anyone taking sartans would never have been affected by any of the variants if you believe there was a virus. Now, if you take sartans after you're injected, it will actually curtail the progression of the genetic modification. Olmesartan and losartan are examples of sartans.
all right. Nimi, go ahead.
Unmute, huh?
Okay, hi. Question on, we were talking about the effects of sound. So, by the way, I've been doing Indian classical singing, and when I started doing it, it was right around COVID, and I was still grieving my father's death. And in 2 years, I can see a massive difference in my mental health, and how I've reconciled everything regarding my father's. I mean, I would start crying if people mentioned him just in passing, and now it's a total transformation. Like none of that sits in my body, and I could see like how my body had deteriorated because I was so much in that, like the grief that was just not resolving, that turned into depression, which was kind of an interesting path. So just to share, the music helped me very much, but it also brought me to a point where the teacher said, Nimisha, I don't take all students because for him, music is a spiritual journey. And he said, if you want to be on this journey with me, I'll take you as a student, but this is not for everyone. This is not to develop a skill. This is to actually inculcate something completely different in your life that you don't have access to. So I totally agree with that because it's made a huge difference for me, and it brings you. It's almost like it takes you to a meditative state that you start perceiving things that you hadn't perceived before, like the way you create the sound and all that changes just because your level of awareness has shifted. So I wanted to share that. And then the other part I wanted to share was around, I mean, another question I have is, when Masaru Emoto talks about when you give that vibration of love, right? So you have a thought, but the thought solidifies when you attach it to an emotion that comes from your heart, correct?
Yeah, this is the concept of chakra bases. This was in an older tradition. They actually had some awareness of some kind because when we look at the light body, it actually looks like the Zoroastrian chart or the chart of chakras or the layout of the pillar beneath the pine cone in the Vatican courtyard of the pine cone. If you look at the pillar beneath it, it's actually it shows the same seven chakras. When you look at Zoroastrianism, it shows you these 14 discs, a feminine and a masculine on each one. But again, it's seven different areas of the body. And I believe that's trying to explain where the focal points are for the emission of this biophotonic field. Now, I have not seen an entire body imaged. I've seen faces, chest, hands. It'd be interesting to see if someone could actually do a whole body. It'd be really fun to see.
Well, this is what I mean. This is what they taught for I don't know how long, as long far back as we can, find information about. But the chakra system is really what, like, oh, what's that Chinese acupuncture? I go get acupuncture all the time, and my acupuncturist, I mean, she's taught me so much. As we're really this electrical field of energy flow. And if you start tapping into those chakra, those are centers of electrical, flux. And so that's what they've been doing for years and years. And that's why, Nimi was talking about her practice, and I understand what you're saying. I mean, that's what a lot of I think Westerners don't understand, is they look at all these chants and these vocal sounds that these deep chanters will make during meditation or ritual practices, and these are sounds that are creating a vibration, and it really does. It takes you to another place that is you can't describe it, but it does give you a different sense of perception. And I'm just saying, I'm not an expert at any of this. But I have had glimpses of these things that, like Nimi is describing, through a lot of different things I've tried. But these chanting and working with this biofield thing, and making these trying to work with your energy, it does give you a totally different set of, lens of perception on reality.
Hey, Nimi, um, can you explain to people about the? I know that the notes in the Vedic scales are different. I remember seeing a thing about a astronomical site that had the stairs that were the notes in the Vedic scales. If you could explain that, that would be great.
So actually, they're very much connected to do re mi fa sol la ti do, like sa re ga ma pa da ni sa, like that. But each note actually resonates with a certain chakra, right? So the sa is the base chakra, re is the creation chakra, ga is the will chakra, the Manipura chakra, which is in the middle in your solar plexus. Then Sarega, and then ga pa is your ma is your heart, pa is your throat, like that. So it actually each one resonates with each of the chakras. And sometimes my teacher will say, today your homework is to just chant ga. And I'll be like, what the heck? Like, I don't even know. By the way, the sound ga, that sound sa re ga, that sound actually has come from another dimension, and it has come through Gandhar, which is the Kandahar desert. There was a big kingdom there, And the king Gandhar, actually, they said that it came down from that region into the music, um, which was well, the Gandhar empire was mentioned in the Mahabharata. So each of these sounds, and the sound, the ga sound actually comes from Shiva through Gandhar into the classical Hindustani music. So yeah, and then they say that each of the chakras connect with each of the colors, of the rainbow. Then there is the chakras connecting with different, with the different planets. So there is, it's like, it's actually, for me, it's a way to know that as much as we would like to stay disconnected in our little bubble, we are so immensely connected. It's pretty amazing. I had a I had a bamboo tree that pretty much died while I was on holiday. My husband didn't take care of it, and I kept it with me for 6 months because I wanted to revive it, and it got revived. It's blooming now. It's amazing because I know that it was waiting for somebody to give it energy. And it's not like, oh, I'm so great. Everybody can do this. Like Sarah said, we are so lucky that we have access to all this information that sometimes I just do experiments. I had another plant that was about to die. I don't know how I missed it. And then I did the same thing. I brought it in, took care of it, and I sent it energy. I gave it the perfect sunlight. I talk to it at least once a day, and it's blooming again. In 4 days, it's back to its normal, its normal plant form. So I find
That's
that fascinating. Yeah.
It is totally fascinating. I did a different form the other night when we decided we were going to do this chat, and I wanted to pull up some different information to try and share. I found this real simple qigong exercise, and literally as I was laying in bed just listening to the video and doing like mentally connecting with what the guy was saying, I pulled energy in, and I was laying down. And I pulled energy in through my back and in through my front, and my entire body just lit up with goosebumps head to toe. And so then I sat there, I turned the video off, I sat there, and then I just projected it out. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to try this with my 13-year-old, and he is like the most, like he has no idea about any of this. I do different things and experiments with him, and he just a lot of times he doesn't get it. And I did this video. I just had him watch the video, and he looked up at me, and as he was doing it with his hands, he was like, "Oh my God, I feel it, Mom." It was the first time he had ever felt the energy flow. So yeah, we can definitely connect with this knowledge, this wisdom through so many different modalities. Um, but energy work is definitely very real, and we cannot avoid it.
I'm having fun because the I'm pointing out the historical aspects of this is that in some previous epoch of civilization, we had full understanding of this stuff, and to the point where it's carried down through traditions that even though we practice the traditions, we had no awareness of what was actually happening. Now, for science guys that or might be teetering on the edge of like, oh yeah, this is all new age crap or something like that, I posted a couple things. One was the Vedic notes in cymatics, and you can see there's actually a structure to each of the notes that is different than the structure of conventional notes of Western society. The other thing I posted was the actual IEEE 802 um, working group for wireless personal area networks. And in this working group, all of the stuff that we're discussing is actually codified and quantified in these papers and electronic standards. So this is mainstream science. This is not new age woo woo. The issue we have is that we haven't had a sufficient amount of time in our current society to develop metaphors that are universal. So we rely on words and concepts that are brought forth from tradition, just like somebody from 100 years from now is going to look at spam and say, what the hell are they talking about spam? or any of the vernacular or colloquialisms that we use today will fade from the metaphoric knowledge base of our language. So as we find new words to describe things, I'm sure they'll become more mainstream, more acceptable in general, thought process. But this stuff is real. This is not woo-woo, crazy, chanting in the dark, uh, or the guru on the top of the mountain. This is like real deal right now. I opened this tonight with a song programmed. Um, that was kind of a little bit of a dig because whether you realize it or not, we've been aware of this stuff since 1995, uh, playing with it since the early 60s, and you are absolutely being programmed. And with the amount of time that we spend on screen flicker, TV set, entertainment, these are all sending signals directly to your body. And being aware of it is the first step in being able to control what happens with your own body. And this is some very cool stuff, and I'm glad we're talking about it.
Actually,
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
when I watch TV, I've shut down my cable since 2007, and I still get calls to to get some cable. Since I shut it down, even if I'm traveling, I'm in a new city, I just turn on the TV in the room. I wake up being really tired. I'm not rested. I don't know what the heck happens, but something seems off. So, totally agreed there. And then I have one question which I've been pondering about since yesterday. So it's kind of in the same vein, probably slightly different from what we're talking about. But I was just looking at some of the old, like the medieval pictures and like paintings and how they portray women, right? Like, and then I was watching like the newer videos of women. Women are beginning to look a lot more, a little bit more athletic than before. Obviously, with quite a bit of strength, to be able to do all these things that probably wasn't done like 400 or 500 years ago. Do you think that the women are going toward that kind of that vein is because there is a specific future that's coming up where women there'll be a demand for women to become warriors, that there is a certain timeline where women
I
would have to
noticed.
become warriors?
I noticed about, geez, it's been 7 years ago now, an epigenetic change that happens before any civil war here in the United States, where uh, the guys who would be the ones that protect their neighborhood, protect their kids, start bulking up, and the mama bears were getting more fit and more actually stronger. Women with like serious muscles on them, and that happens when there's a conflict brewing, and when there's a societal division, that always happens. Now, and I state that because I've been through three prior civil wars, so different countries, but same situations. Actually, exact same characters, same patterns. But the one of the things that's happening in the United States is that we have a hyperfeminization, and that's intentional. A couple chemicals are being used in conventional foods, atrazine being one of them, and there's another chemical that is a estrogen mimicker. It's called estrivol, and the soy products contain high. The GMO soy contains high estrivol. Normal soy will have quite a bit of estrivol, equal to about a birth control pill per serving. But the GMO soy, like your regular Starbucks latte with soy, that's going to be about 5 birth control pills worth of estrivol, not estrogen, but a biosimilar chemical. Now, atrazine is a chemical that when the child in the fetus, the child at the third month of fetal development, the brain differentiates into male or female. And physicality, the genetics will will always be male or female. Contrary to the belief in multiple genders, we're binary species. Um, that expression in the brain is being suppressed by atrazine, and this may be the reason why we're seeing hyper um, feminine women in their 20s to 40s, and the advent or the increase in popularity of transsexualism among men in their 20s to 40s again. Now, um, that was directly attributable to the use of atrazine as a pesticide in California food crops. And, Alex Jones was right. Uh, University of Berkeley did a study and found out that the reduction in frog populations in the areas surrounding farms in Southern California was due to atrazine causing the frogs to be attracted to male pheromone, regardless of what sex they were. So it was literally turning the frogs to be attracted to the same sex. So that aspect of that pollutant that was created in the United States and pushed out into the world, that is part of the WEF plan to feminize North America, because 100 years ago we were extremely fertile, extremely um, virile. Men were extremely virile. Typical family had 6 kids. So today, you're lucky if you find a family that has 3 kids. So yeah, that's what's going on there. Is we're seeing the and the other one was the BHT, the bovine growth hormone. That was causing young girls. We're talking like 8, 10-year-old girls to develop breasts, and the hyperfeminization of those girls continues into their adulthood. So they become like basically Amazon type caricatures. So yeah, that's what's going on there.
Is that all you wanted to ask, Nimi? Or you have
Yeah,
any more
for now
thoughts?
I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you, Nimi. Anybody else have any other questions? I wanted to add in here too. I cannot remember where I've read this in a couple of different places, but and I don't know if it's theory or if it's like from old teachings, but there's some thought around memory. Well, there's a component of this biofield is connected to our, like it directly connected to our DNA, and it's a unique signature for each person. But there's also some thought that there's and through Eileen McCusick's work, she says that she can literally, when she uses the tuning forks around somebody's biofield, she she gets imprints when she comes to a place that has a different pitch, when because what she does is she takes a tuning fork and she goes around a person's energy body, and she'll come to a place where the tuning fork makes a different sound, the pitch changes, and when that happens, she will get a mental image, and she instantly knows, like she's tapping into their memory field, so of old past experiences and traumas in their a person's youth, whether it be injury or abuse or illness. She gets these mental images and can instantly work on helping to close up that area of energy, in energy distortion in a person's field. And it absolutely works. She has series on her YouTube channel of videos where she talks about her processes and her line of tuning forks and all that. But there's also oftentimes where she will do small, like Sunday tuning sessions, and because this can be done remotely. This is across time and space. So she will do just generalized tuning sessions for the audience. You can listen to them at any time. When you listen to them, not every video that she does, I don't experience this, but several of them I do. I feel something happening. So there's that too. There is this kind of underlying theory, or, some say that they're tapping into memories. So this field may be holding some of our memory, um, you know, genetically. So anyway, there's that. Anybody else have any other questions or
Two
comments?
things there, Sarah. You actually brought up two great points. On using tuning forks, one of the cool things is that anytime that you're trying to process information, um, there's a floor of noise. So let's say that you have, and this is actually how super heterodyning in a radio system works. Um, a radio actually tunes into every radio station at the same time, and then it uses a separate oscillator to tune out all the other radio signals except for the one you want to listen to. It's called super heterodyning, and that's been around since the 1930s. Now, using the tuning fork actually creates that canceling signal so that she's able to distinguish the information signal over the noise floor. And there are
Yeah,
other
that's precisely how she describes it. Yes.
And there are other processes when we do large statistical, like predictive analytics, when we come across items that we believe might be noise, we would publish those items so that that noise level would be increased, and we could measure the increase in the noise and cancel it out. It would allow us to identify the noise in the actual data signal. So that's an example of a similar application to what we're talking about now. The second thing that you were saying there is that the remote time and space, and this is one of those things that people have a tough time with. Is temporal mechanics is the idea that we have a linear progression of time, and that's not actually that's not actually the case. We don't have a limitation in space time outside of our physicality, our literal, like the matter that's coalesced around our bodies right now. That's where we're limited in space time. When we actually look beyond it, we're able to see far into the distance, far into the past, far into the future.
Yeah, it's pretty fast. It's just so phenomenal, and it's so right here and accessible. And anybody can, when you start using those modalities, it's like these things turn on within you, just like she gets this vision of what's going on because she's able to block out these other frequencies like you articulated so well. And then she receives the message. She can see into this person's past, and and I'm not trying, this isn't like, I'm not promoting her solely, because there's many methods that these types of things can be done. But this is like, she teaches other people, other practitioners, how to do this, and they all experience the same thing. I've got a personal friend that practices in Chicago, and she has described the same thing to me over and over again. So go ahead, Mike, you're unmuted.
Okay, I had some questions, but are very similar to what Nimi was asking. Um, I do energy healing with chi energy, though I first learned it from a kind of Irish Scots tradition. So we did have it in Europe, but like members of my wife's family, they were hunted witches at one point. So it kind of very few still do it out of that tradition, and much of it is lost. Now, we did also put it into the music we played. So, we're playing traditional Scots Irish music, and being pulling up healing thoughts and energy and connecting with the audience puts that through, though we don't, discuss it. They're just listening to our music, but it can be put through with that. And I understand that about traditional classical Indian music. because one of my great experiences was hearing Ali Akbar Khan live, and that was a very spiritual experience. Though, we were talking about the scale. I would just suspect that in the Indian scale would be more of a natural scale and not equal temperament. Now, another question would be, we were starting to go into chakras, and that's something that's kind of new to me. I did learn Reiki to add to my healing repertoire. Now, since you're looking at the images that the frequencies create, and that chakra was, I guess, in Sanskrit described as a spinning wheel. Has that been imaged as a spinning energy center?
Yeah, actually, when you get into the 802 stuff, the 802.15 stuff, um, the carrier definitions are spirals. Now, this was
Mm.
something that a lot of people have real difficult with, especially um, the people who are following the concept of flat Earth and the disk world and all that. Um, we see motion, inertial action, like with a pendulum. And if you look at the swing of a pendulum, the deflection of the swing has a specific arc period to it. So it curves as it goes from point to point, which indicates that we're not moving in a circle, but we're moving in a spiral. And that makes sense when you actually understand the model of the dynamics of how the solar system is moving through the galaxy and the Earth is moving behind the sun and the planets are moving behind the sun. And like when a toilet flushes and you see the water swirl down, it's the same thing with when a bubble collapses. There's an immense amount of energy that swirls the bubble into the center. Now, um, that curve or that arc actually happens in the decay of every. When I say decay, what I'm talking about is music decay. So if I strike a note and I put it on an oscilloscope and I see that the amplitude decays over time. In other words, the amplitude reduces over time for the note. It's not a physical decay; it's actually an amplitude decay. A level of sound is reduced, and the pattern of that reduction is spiral. So we can say that is the actual. Oh yeah, somebody just put a biogeometry signature PDF up there. So she's actually showing what I'm speaking of, the actual spirals. It's in the chat.
Some people I have seen actually take some of these spirals or, these images and draw them onto the backs of their watches, on band-aids. They wear them on a piece of paper in the sole of their, or, under their shoes. So yeah, I've seen a lot of different people discussing this and experimenting with it. And a lot of people say they have results. I don't know. I've not tried the biogeometry, but I've read this book that I just posted, and it's fascinating. Mike, did you have any more questions or comments?
That I really like this subject because it gets down to the real fundamentals of light, sound, and even spirals. I mean, spirals are like as a mythic images, it's one of the most ancient and powerful. It has real meaning for us. And this is we're kind of discovering some of the reasons why, with it being such a part of our universe. And when I do the Reiki, I mean, that's what I'm doing. I'm creating the pattern of a spiral with the energy and then putting that down into the chakra.
Yeah, and again, remember that the reason why we have these odd sounding words to describe this stuff is we don't have a common set of metaphors yet. I mean, you know, 50 years from now, they may call it, you know, the Beetlejuice. You know, we don't know what it's actually going to end up being called, but right now we're using historical and traditional names for the stuff.
Well, I kind of like doing that because these older traditions are maybe ones that were kind of protected in the mountains, like in the mountains of Scotland and West Virginia, or with the Peruvian, Inca shamans in the Andes, that they weren't affected by like Roman psyops and rewriting of the history by Khazarians.
Yeah, the hill people are interesting. The Merovingian, actually, that's Merovingian are related to our family. Um, they have tremendous tradition in the Kentucky and you know the Blue Ridge Mountain Hills. And personally, I believe they were here before Columbus, but you know that's another whole debate. I think Billy Ray Cyrus did a whole series of documentaries on the culture and the traditions of those people. And you have Scotch, Irish, and French, and a lot of them trace their history back to Nasara, you know, back to the Euphrates and Tigris rivers. So very interesting. There's also in the southern end, the Cherokee, were actually believed to be the lost tribe of one of the lost tribes of Judah.
Thanks, Mike. Mimi, did you have some? You want to come back next?
Yeah, if nobody else has their hand raised, if it's okay.
Well, go ahead.
Okay. So, couple things. Mike said something quite interesting with the Irish traditions. I had read that the Egyptian pharaohs, uh, their understanding was that they could get to the after that their access to the afterlife was actually through Ireland, and some Iranian scientists were doing some of this experimentation on how they thought, like the Hill of Terror and all that is very well known, but they're saying that as if there was probably a portal or something through Ireland that was giving them access to the afterlife. So just something to investigate. I haven't gone deep into it, and that's one of my flaws. I take enough for my understanding, but I don't go deep. So that was something that was really interesting. And then the other thing was when we talk about when I was talking about singing, it's not so much that I'm singing it, but that I'm listening to myself singing. That is really powerful because a lot of the older traditions said that, for example, when you're speaking your intention, it kind of it becomes a little bit more solidified when you start hearing what's coming out of your mouth. So it's like that circuit has to kind of close, and that your heart and mind have to be synced up. So it's almost like in in uh, in the not Hinduism. Hinduism is a way of life. So Sanatan Dharma is the religion, and they say that man, vachan, karma, right? So your mind, your speaking, your mind and heart kind of the same. Your speaking and your actions have to be consistent for a certain outcome to come up, but you shouldn't do the action for the outcome. You do the action because that's your dharma. Your dharma is to do the action. Like there's a dharma for everybody. Like as a daughter, I have a dharma. As a wife, I have a dharma. So everybody, like if you follow the dharma and you do the right actions and don't think about the outcome that it's going to have, but that you did the action, almost 100% the fruits will come. It's just that we're all disconnected from that loop because sometimes we shoot in the dark, and we take the action only where we think that we're going to reap the fruits of it. But Krishna talked to Arjun when he was on the battlefield, who said, do the action and leave the fruits of the action to me, and usually 100% it will get delivered. So I think the way we all think about it is I'm only taking action where I know the fruits are going to be delivered. And that's where some of the flaws are happening too, because I mean, I see it in my own life like, oh, I could take this action, but I don't because I'm not sure of the outcome. And so I hold back. But what if I just took the action and then leave it up to the forces to for whatever fruit that comes out of it? I was wondering if Dave and other people had any opinions about that.
This is actually one of our, the same concept is taught through the story of fish and loaves, and the idea of giving from oneself freely. The reward is not just that you are fed, but everyone is fed. And also, I'm speaking in the stories of Christianity. Um, it's in the concept where Jesus was talking with actually his brother-in-law, and I know Bible thumpers will have a problem with this, but the rich man who couldn't pass through the eye of a needle was actually talking about the fact that he was a good man because he was giving 10% of his wealth in alms, a tradition in India, giving of alms, and that he gave exactly 10% because that's what was expected of him in order to receive reward. And that's when Jesus said to him that a wealthy man can no more pass a camel through the eye of a needle than he can buy his way into heaven. So that same concept of giving freely of one's heart for the sake of giving, not worrying about the reward portion of it, was taught in both of those parables or stories of Christianity.
And there is something to be said about what you were speaking, speaking. I think this is part of our creative, this is our part of God in us is he, I mean, you think in the beginning God spoke before there was light and he created light. So there's something about the spoken word, and that's we have the same creative force, but it does solidify something in reality is when you speak something. I've heard so many
Sarah,
people.
I've had a ton of arguments or discussions with guys about uh, the actual Aramaic of John 1:1, and uh, there's there's two words for word in Aramaic. One is atanai, which is an enunciation or like a chorus hit, okay, like not a proclamation, but a sound that you would make with your mouth. And then there's tenet, and tenet is the same in Greek. It means to write down a word. Now, when John 1:1 was translated from Aramaic to Greek to Latin, it became tenet. It became the written word. And the reason that was is that at the time that was done, 352 AD, with King Theodora, is it fit with the beliefs of Mithraism that possession of a talisman, a written word, gave you the power of that word. So the meaning was distorted from being God created this vibration through enunciation, and it again in Aramaic in the Mount Olive prayer that's recited nowadays as "Our Father who art in heaven." The actual words that were said was Abawan Bashmaji, which means he who causes all things that live and vibrate. So Bashmaji is to create a living sound or a living light or a living vibration. So, and that's where the root word for magic comes from. That's where magi comes from, and the wise men, stories of Christianity. But that's in Aramaic. That's what Jesus called God, was Abawan Bashmaji. So I think it's kind of interesting that from the transliteration and the the curtailment and rewriting, we lost some of that meaning.
Well, and that's in you know in magic, and that's what the talismans are. Is, a lot of people freak out, oh my god, talismans. Well, talismans are an individual creation. Like, what you do is you take an idea or a thought or a concept or something you want to help bring into reality, and you draw your own interpretive representation of that in a symbolic shape onto a piece of paper, a piece of anything you want, and then you meditate with that. It helps you to ground in and actually bring in that energy. It's part of it's a creational force. Um, but yeah, and just this just like what you were talking about, Dave. It is there. It's what Dr. Emoto's experiments proved. I mean, you can visually see that with the rice experiments and the water experiments. So there's something there that is really powerful that we shouldn't overlook. I was gonna bring in I and I'm sorry if I say this wrong, Frescachet.
I was gonna ask about TENS machines and using that for energy to help heal. What you thought about that? Using one of
I
those
run the
machines.
batteries out every day on
No,
mine. Yeah,
I had hurt my knee and I've been trying to use that to help heal it. And
yeah.
is
It's
there a
actually
certain hertz
well,
that
it's not a
is the
hertz. Here's the
like
trick
that
with
I
using
should
a
try to
TENS
get
machine.
in?
Yeah, just connect it up. What you want to do? Do you
Hmm.
have a voltmeter or an ohm meter? Do you have a
It
meter?
just says it
You
doesn't
just
have a
have the
meter on it.
pads. Okay. So what you need to do
Hmm.
is take a toothpick and on the surface of your knee, on the inside surface, I'm imagining you have a problem with your ACL.
On the
Is
outside,
it,
yes.
okay,
On the
on the
outside.
outside? Okay. So
Hmm.
what you would do is you would take the toothpick and run a line from the front of your tibia to the back of your calf. And you'll feel a spot where you'll have a sensitivity greater than the rest of the sensitivity. And just, I'm not saying
Okay.
jab yourself with it, just run it. And that's the point that you're going to put the lower pad. Then do the same thing above your knee
Okay.
and run it across from the top to the bottom. And then place the upper pad directly over that point. Now, in Reiki, those are called meridians.
Of
In
sensitivity.
of sensitivity,
Hmm.
yeah. In um, acupuncture, those are I believe they're called meridians in acupuncture as well, but they're the actual um, most surface part of the nerve that's associated with that area of your body. Now, when you place the
Like
TENS
needling
machines on, what's that? Say again.
needling versus
Well, no,
acupuncture?
needling is a
Needling?
little different. That goes on with the more of a Chinese tradition with cupping or
Okay.
with yeah, but with the TENS machine, what you're going to do is put the TENS machine on, put it up as high as you can stand it, and then you want to take a look at the shape of the blush that comes to the surface. There'll be an actual blush, like a reddening that comes to the surface. Measure that accurately, and that's going to give you the wavelength
Okay.
of the frequency that will actually benefit that area. Now, there are two ways to use a TENS machine. Oh, three ways actually. Most TENS machines are safe, so you can't use a third way. But one way is to cause fatigue of the muscles that are inflamed around it, and the fatigue causes it to relax. That's why you keep jacking up the TENS machine over time, because the muscle conductivity becomes lower as it fatigues. Now, the second thing that we're describing here, by applying specific tones across the injury, is to cause that injury to resonate. Now, when the energy resonates in that injury, it'll actually increase the amount of available energy for cellular mitosis. Now, in and itself won't cause a cellular mitosis, so you have to intend, literally with your mind, think, this is healing, and picture it being healthy, and imagine it being healthy in your mind. Now, that creates a tipping point of intent on the mitosis, which actually causes the mitosis to take place. It's very cool. It's like intending to observe something. It actually works. So that will accelerate the healing of it using a TENS machine. The third way is if the safety is turned off to where you can get the current above 23 milliamp, you can ablate the nerve. So you can literally remove the pain from the area. And by doing so, just the area between the pads will become numb. So, for instance, I had a bullet go through my ACL on my left knee, and I'll throw a picture up in the group chat. I ablated the nerve so that I don't have pain in that. Now, the side of my knee is numb because there is no nerve there for it to actually give me any pain.
And let me add to, I'm sorry, jump in here, but this is a problem that I had a hard time with, and so it might help somebody else. When he told you to imagine or to believe or to see that part healed, to just intend it, it was easy for me for the first while to like doubt myself or talk myself out of it. You just have to have the faith in yourself, have the faith that this is where faith comes in. Do you have any other questions or comments?
Seems like Josh has been waiting an awful long time. So if you don't have anything more, Francesca, then let's let Josh talk.
Okay, Josh isn't showing up on my end. Vigilance, can you see him, or Dave, can you see him and let him in? I don't see him here.
Go ahead and unmute, Josh. One, two, three. Come on,
Yo,
unmute.
hey.
There you go, buddy.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment about plants and energy, but I posted a link to the PDF. But Brown University did a study on jalapeno plants, and they grounded half of the plants. They're in a greenhouse, and they're up on tables, and they just ran a copper wire into the pots, and then they had their control plants that didn't have any wires that were grounded. And they moved the plants around to account for different lighting. And I think after 3 months, they had double the yield in produce. So there's definitely something there with being connected to the earth, and that study showed it really well. And then as far as healing goes, a lot of people know about it, but not everybody. But earthing is starting to gain traction, and that's where you put your own bare feet on clean soil or damp concrete. And there's probably 30 or 40 studies that have been done that show a simple physiological response. So these are really easy measurements to take, and then just hitting on uh, the estrogen levels. Hops are another one. I think they used hops for birth control, and like way back in the day. But that increases your estrogen levels as well. So that's all I wanted to comment about.
It's something like so stevia, for example, which is a great plant and it's used a lot of artificial sweeteners, but the regular consumption of stevia is effectively a contraceptive for I think 60 to 90 days. There are papers you can find that speak to this, but stevia, so a sweetener is basically a contraceptive, and that may be useful for couples, like if that is intended. I don't know about in terms of long-term detrimental, but like that's a substance that's regularly introduced that has an effect on us.
Yeah, in fact, when you see the words plant based on anything, I can guarantee you that the chemical molecules that you're putting in your body from that are going to have the opposite chirality to naturally formed molecules. Um, this is an aspect of why I'm an organic Nazi. Um, I use turbamine, which is raw cane sugar. I use 90 grams a day to maintain my blood sugar between 80 and 100. And I do not use starch of any kind. And I'm on an extreme protein diet. I eat 280 grams of protein a day. Now, the my situation is I'm in protein wasting. That's why I have to do that. But the use of artificial sweeteners became popular during the Bush administration when Dick Cheney ran neotame through um, the Texas prison system to get it qualified for FDA approval. And uh, since then, we had the emergence of, I think, 6 different, quote, undiagnosable illnesses, such as fibromyalgia and restless leg syndrome was another one. These are neurologic toxins. And when we look at stevia, sure, stevia plant itself is a sweetener, but the stuff that you're buying granulated, um, it may have started as stevia, but it's not. It's not a natural product. Um, when you look at regular foods that are marked organic, there's a telltale as to whether or not they're actually not organic because the FDA plays games with this. If it has the words natural flavors in or natural flavoring, sorry, it's natural flavoring. Natural flavoring is um, a walk around for using modified tapioca um, sugar. It's a sugar alcohol, okay, called neotame, or um, the earlier one was aspartame. Now, aspartame was produced by feeding bacteria grid toxic materials, and botulism bacteria would produce a sweetener. It was a neurotoxin that actually made you unable to taste anything but sweet. So, with the advent of that, we saw obesity go through the roof. We saw diabetes, just horrible stuff. And if any of you guys have not taken up and gone solely organic, you absolutely must. That is the primary lane of attack on people today, is through synthetic foods, and it's becoming more and more. Things like the mystery meat, the can't believe it's beef. Well, I can't believe it's beef. Okay, no, this is not. This is cultured bacteria, and along with the issues of immune response or immune suppression, you also have the chemical, the situation where the molecules are not cohesive with the sound that your body makes. They're discordant. And that's chirality is you can have a molecule made by nature will have what they call left-handed chirality, and this was discovered by Louis Pasteur in wine diamonds. Um, the sulfate crystals on the lid of barrels stood upright were called wine diamonds. And when he studied them compared to sulfite crystals um, that were formed through synthetic means like decomposition of sulfur salts, um, he found that there was an opposite chirality. And he noted it. It was never studied much. But when we talk about these subtle energetics, like the bioquantum field and the biophotonics, um, electrical signals that are opposite in phase will cancel each other out. Now, you want it, ideally, you want all the parts of your body to be in the same phase so that the energy that you're exerting isn't canceled. Disease is discordance, or actually the word disease is the concept of being canceling health or canceling um, this field that generates the energy of life. So yeah, just stay away from the artificial sweeteners completely. Use sugar in moderation. Don't use refined sugar. Refined sugar also has same issue with chirality, and it'll cause cloudiness in your blood, and it'll cause all kind of problems that you've read about, cancer blooming, all kind of stuff. It's because of the phase of the actual molecule.
Yeah, and to add on top of that, there is a common additive that we all experience, citric acid. Um, and I'll say this broadly. Citric acid, I believe, is derived from like a black mold substance, and there are certain substances, certain supplements out in the world. You'll see vitamin C, vitamin B by certain companies. And what I would always encourage is to do your research into how that is derived, because some of these vitamins are derived from, say, cyanide, or from less than favorable places due to their abundance in the chemical process. Like, I think there's a meme that floats out there that says that mouthwash was basically floor cleaner, just redesigned for the human mouth. Like, there are many things that we will encounter in the realm that we live within that are repurposed because of profitability. And this isn't a slight on capitalism. It just it's opportunism, and that has opportunism and the idea of coin for play dominates a lot of aspects of our lives. And I think a lot of us can look at that and see that.
Here's a fun one for you. Next time you're in a grocery store, pick up a box of Cocoa Puffs and read the ingredients in Cocoa Puffs. Down in the list, you'll find trisodium phosphate (TSP). The reason why that's added to Cocoa Puffs, yeah, that's a common ceramic tile dehazing chemical used for cleanup after grouting. Um, it also has the effect of nullifying the lead sensors in the FDA's testing equipment. So when they started using African sourced um, cacao in Cocoa Puffs, they added the TSP to lower the lead content of the Cocoa Puffs, because in Africa, along the Gambia Mali corridor there, where the cacao is grown, they use leaded gas. Now, the leaded gas they use is different than ours. We had like fraction of a percent of plumber sulfate in our gasoline. They have high percentage, like 2.6% in their gasoline, and everything around there is literally has a thin coating of lead. You can get toxic exposure just by touching stuff, the buildings and stuff along the roadside. So as they started importing this cacao, it was being rejected, and of course, the makers of Cocoa Puff took the opportunity to buy it up cheap and add it to their products. So, uh, yeah, take a look at the packages; they're telltale on ingredients.
Josh, thank
And
you.
that's
Did you?
where
Oh,
and that's where, with a lot of the topics that we cover, folks, and we share from, giving perspective, and with the questions and the dialogue that we have, we're looking at organic experience, like, as much as there are a lot of reports and studies. These are all things that we're sharing as humans. We're sharing them as our lived experience, be it as something we read or something we've been through ourselves. So I thank everyone, and I can say that Sarah and I and Dave all appreciate that. The questions you guys ask, we appreciate the authenticity of them, and I encourage anybody who has any type of question to speak up.
yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with that. Josh, are you done, or you have any more questions or comments?
No, I had a question about magnesium, and there just seems to be like 10 different kinds of magnesium out there. And I didn't know if anybody had any insight on the best one.
Um, I actually, this is fun. I buy cheap magnesium, um, but my favorite way to take magnesium is to use a magnesium gel. Let me take a look at what brand it is. I have an issue with lactic acid, and Epsom salts is the best way to reduce lactic acid in muscle. Just rubbing Epsom salts on, Epsom salts lotion or Epsom salts, which is magnesium sulfate. So I don't have the bottle in front of me, but they make a gel that's excellent. It's a magnesium sulfate gel, and you can get it through most chiropractors who sell vitamins. I think Standard Process is one of the brands, but that's the one I use, and it's the only thing that's in it is a water-based gelling agent that's made out of guar and magnesium sulfate. So it's pretty straightforward.
Josh, were you meaning a topical magnesium or something you take internally? I I take a lot of magnesium soaks, but I also make my own topical magnesium spray just by taking um, water that I distill myself and soaking some magnesium flakes in it, and you can make a whole bottle of it real easy and cheap.
Yeah, colloids are good. The penetration. One of the issues with like magnesium supplements is that the majority of the magnesium will just pass through your digestive tract because you don't have um, sufficient sulfuric compounds in your digestive tract normally to allow it to become absorbable. Now, magnesium sulfate is what is the salt that's necessary to break down lactic acid and provide benefit for muscle growth. So that's what most people are taking magnesium for. So look for magnesium sulfate in any form you can find it.
Yeah, appreciate it. No, I just was confused or overwhelmed by all the different magnesiums and never drilled down into it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's what's
overwhelming.
bioavailable. That's what's the easy thing to do.
Thanks, Josh. All right, Walter, go ahead.
Come on, Walters. I see you way down there in the weeds.
All right. Anybody else have any other questions before we wrap up here? Go ahead, JB.
Okay, I had a doctor that was doing muscle testing, and he found out I was allergic to aloe and nightshades, and I was kind of surprised by that. And I'm guessing the body is continually trying to communicate what's going on with it. That's how I found out I had the C word. Um, and so I was wondering about, I guess, the energy field that does muscle testing and lets you know that there's what's wrong with you if you're feeling fatigued or you're getting headaches or anything that's going on with you, how that works exactly. So if you could explain that, if you know anything about it, that would be great.
Yeah, our bodies talk to us all the time. We're just we're basically ill-equipped to understand what the hell they're saying. I was talking last night about the interesting part about the woman's endometrium communicating with the fetus. Uh, Women tend to have chemical receptors in taste, smell, and endometrial tissue combined into their sense of smell and sense of taste. Um, so your chemical perception is going to be in off taste. Now, typically, um, I've been told that cancerous tissue will have a metallic taste to it. In other words, you'll have a zinc or uh, like an aluminum taste in your mouth, or first thing in the morning when you wake up, you have a little bit of a foul taste, and that's an indication. That's your body actually communicating with you. Now you also have the with cancer. I was talking with somebody recently about this too. Is that what we call cancer is runaway cell division, and when we say runaway, it means that the rate of cell division is exceeding the rate of macrophage capability of identifying and destroying errant cells. So immune system fortification rather than suppression in the form of chemotherapy would be the sensible way to go. Now, I'm not a doctor. I don't give medical advice. I give personal advice. But I personally use a group of enzymes that are found in bioflavonoids to suppress sarcoma and glioblastoma. I'm radioactive. I've been radioactive 35 years. And since I've been using granatine in high dose, I drink 4 quarts, 4 liters of 40x concentrate pomegranate juice each week. So that's the equivalent of 160 liters of pomegranate juice. Now, um, I have not had to have an excision of one of the sarcomas. Um, I'm still radioactive. I still hold my Geiger counter up to me, and I'm about 300 clicks per minute. So it's enough to set off detectors, and I have not developed serious cancers. Um, Now I'm going to post. I have 2 documents that you should take a look at. One of them is on the enzymatic suppression of metastatic and ductal uh, lymphatic cancers using different enzymes that are found in plants. And the other document is 1,000 or 100 plants that are treatment against cancers. So I'll post those in the chat for you to be able to grab.
Thank you. I appreciate that. My other thing was that this is part of energy. Since I was born, I'm highly sensitive to animals and insects and stuff. I never wanted to hurt them or anything like that. And I feel like um, I'm that way with people too. I'm like empath, you know. I don't know if that has to do with my energy field or how some people have more of that and people have less of that. And I'm not bragging at anything. I'm just saying that that's how I am. And it's been really hard for me to live in a world that's less sensitive and people that don't understand people like me. But anyway, if you could talk on that a little bit, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm old enough that we used to call that a kind heart. So yeah, empathic. Um, if we were to take uh, uh, a scan of your brain and introduce radioactive oxygen so that we can see the areas of the brain that use the most oxygen, and have you think of another person, what we would see is an area that's 2 inches back from your forehead, 3 inches over from either side of your. I'm sorry, the other way around. 2 inches in from either side of your head, and 3 inches back from your forehead. There's an area there called C23 that is related to empathy and religious experience. And I would guarantee that your vascularization there is higher than average vascularization for the rest of your brain. Now, how that develops, who knows? This is a scientific discovery. Unfortunately, the people who discovered this were looking at it to characterize a weapon to be used against um, uh, Muslim um, suicide bombers. And there were virus and bacterial agents that were created, and they ended up with a prion agent that affects that area of the brain, and that's why they're aware of it, or it's a known quantity. But yeah, there are people who actually have an empathic part to them that's actually more developed than other people.
That's good to know. Thank you for covering that. That's all I have for now. I think we're coming up on 2 hours. I didn't know how long we'd be talking.
It's actually just to build on your last statement there. So one of the individuals that was speaking with us last night, Diane, and this plays right into the last question, was through this process and as we move through the time that we're living, the empathic part, the psychic part, the biofield part, is anybody having any difficulty remembering their dreams, or is anybody really remembering their dreams? And this would be over the last 2 to 3 years. And so this would be like your connectivity to yourself. And maybe Dave, you can speak to that if you've had any experience with that.
I learned yesterday that Tesla had the exact same sleep pattern that I have. They came up with a name for it. It's called polyphasic sleeping, and I sleep 4 to 5 hours one time a day, and then I'll take 15 to 20 minute uh, naps, so to speak. Now, what's interesting is I don't have absolute control over when I go into that nap state. I go into immediate high rapid eye movement and have vivid dreams, hallucinations, whatever you want to call them. Typically, it's when I'm working on something and I'll be pissed off. I'm laughing because I get pissed off at myself that I fell asleep because I'm in my mind I'm actually finishing what I was doing, but then I wake up and nothing's done. It's like, oh, I was sleeping, you know. So yeah, I have very vivid dreams, and I actually there's some fun things that I do that's called lucid dreaming. When I realize I'm in a dream state, I'll go visit places.
Yeah, vigilance. I've definitely had all my adult life. I have had no recollection of any dreams that I ever had. Like I never had dreams. I had them when I was a child, very vividly. Like I remember them as today, as if I were still there. And in my entire adult life, nothing until about, I'd say, mm, probably the last 3 or 4 years, they have kicked in. And recently, within the last year, they've really gotten vivid where I'm in them and the information is, it's almost like I'm being taught or um, shown things or taught things. And it's so real that when I wake up, um, it's like I retain everything with incredible clarity. So it's really fascinating. All right, we're going to wrap up tonight with Jay, who wants to speak here. Hold on a second. Okay, go ahead. You should be able to.
You try
There
unmuting.
you go. Yeah, I'm good now. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Sarah, everybody. Thank you again. Again, I'm like a second or third time listener and learning all types of new stuff. Dave, you hit on a bunch of different topics that relate to me or spoke to me. Everything from waves and frequency. I actually am a big I own a telecommunications company. We set up actually mid-band spectrum throughout the country, like LTE and 5G CBRS. And want to reiterate the point of everybody should definitely get their ham radio license. I think that's super important in the near term, especially. And Dave, one thing you were just talking about lucid dreaming, it just like as soon as you said it, reminded me of a book I just read. It's called Awakening in the Dream by David Wilcock. If you guys haven't read that book, highly suggest it. All about lucid dreaming, and definitely improved my sleep quality, I would say, as well as explained a lot for me, like the vivid dreaming, as you explained, Dave. Very, very similar stuff happens to me. So super interesting, but that's all I wanted to say. And thank you all.
Awesome. Thank you, Jay. All right. Well, Dave, you want to say good night to everybody and God bless everybody and thank you for joining us.
May the creator of the universe and all things that live and breathe bless you in each and everything that you wish to do, that you do, and all of your friends, family, and love. Good night.